Blake Lively has served a subpoena on the law firm of Bryan Freedman, who represents Justin Baldoni and the so-called Wayfarer parties.
The narrative that existed prior to her filing that complaint, which was, she seems like a real bitch, and she is tone deaf on domestic violence, and she seems to have blown up her movie for no apparent reason. Those were the buzz. That was part of the buzz going around about her. She bullies reporters. That was also part of it. So is that your theory of the case, Bryan?
Justin Baldoni case is another one. Again, Justin Baldoni is Jewish, obviously. So is Steve Sarowitz. I'm like the worst anti-Semite ever. Here I am defending these people. But it's the same thing. She went to the press and tried to smear this man and ruin his existence by claiming, in so many words, that he had sexually harassed her. And she made him sound, with the help of the New York Times, like he was an absolute creep, a pervert, a sex-addicted pervert. If you read that article, you took away that Justin Baldoni was a sex-addicted pervert.
I mean, when I get direct messages on Instagram from women that tell me I'm perfect and they look the way they do, I just try to delete. Because it's conscious, because I know where that goes, and I know that I'm also weak. I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect. Yeah. I adore my wife.
Far.
Super far from perfect.
So
far.
Can't even see the other side.
Justin Baldoni fails to submit his second amended complaint against Blake Lively. Did he really accept defeat? Looks like he did.
Well, hello there. I have not made a video about Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively for a little while now, but that hasn't stopped a whole load of other content creators working overtime to convince us there has never been a smear campaign against her after she dared to make an official complaint that she and others experienced sexual harassment while on the set of the movie It Ends With Us. Before we get into an update of what's really been going on, I looked up the definition of sexual harassment. Inappropriate behaviour of a sexual nature, such as repeated sexual advances or offensive remarks that occurs usually in a workplace, school or other institutional setting, especially by a person in authority. Unwelcome sexual advances, harassment that is sexual in nature, unwelcome sexual behaviour by a supervisor toward an employee. This is according to the US government website. Harassment does not have to be of a sexual nature, however, and can include offensive remarks about a person's sex. For example, it is illegal to harass a woman by making offensive comments about women in general. Although the law doesn't prohibit simple teasing, offhand comments, or isolated incidents that are not very serious, harassment is illegal when it is so frequent or severe that it creates a hostile or offensive work environment, or when it results in an adverse employment decision. And then there is a link where you can officially file a charge. And so, if an official complaint is made against a company, legally they are officially obliged to investigate it. And there's a law to protect the victim, which makes it illegal to retaliate against them in any way. However, in the case of Wayfarer Productions, Justin's company who produced the movie, no investigation was made, although the complaint was acknowledged back in 2023. And so by the time the film was released in August 2024, he had to hire a crisis PR, as rumours were circulating about tensions between them all. A woman called Melissa Nathan, who it's known worked with Johnny Depp to discredit Amber Heard on social media, allegedly using bot accounts to amplify the negative comments against her. And that was when she was trying to prove in court that she had been abused by Johnny Depp. And Justin wanted to get away from his current PR, Stephanie Jones, and he sent them a text of a Twitter thread where Hailey Bieber had been accused of bullying and said, "This is what we need." And so Melissa Nathan worked with Jennifer Abel, who worked for Stephanie Jones, to poach her and Justin as a client for her company Tag PR, which coincidentally was owned by one of Justin's buddies, serial woman harasser Scooter Braun, who Justin had previously tagged on an Instagram post and completely unironically appeared on his Man Enough podcast on an episode about the Me Too movement. which, would you believe, featured Woody Allen.
I grew up in a house where my mother took me to pro-choice rallies. You know, I managed and spent a lot of time talking to very empowered females. I married an empowered female. And I was talking to one of my clients who is an empowered female, and I was trying to fix it for her. My wife was sitting next to me, and she just looked at me and she goes, "Shut up and listen. Just tell her what she's saying is justified and listen to what she is trying to tell you."
And it's crazy he had to hire a crisis PR to protect his image when all along he'd built his brand on saying how we have to listen to women and being an advocate for victims. Unless he was about to be exposed as a fake, because he was willing to pay an extra 30 grand a month to instigate a social combat plan, of which there is written email evidence of it being discussed, with the focus on Reddit and TikTok accounts, to create false comments and engagement, all of which were meant to be untraceable, although that did not age well. And there's been additional evidence to show from Unsealed email exhibit that Jedwallace, the social media mitigator, was indeed paid 30 grand by bank transfer, authorised by none other than Jamie Heath, the CEO at Wayfarer Productions. And the reason why we have all these texts and emails to show how this social engineering astroturfing campaign, which is used to manipulate the online narrative, was orchestrated, is thanks to the New York Times article published in December 2024, written by a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, Megyn, who previously had helped to expose Harvey Weinstein, which was titled "We Can Bury Anyone Inside a Hollywood Smear Machine." And so Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer parties, Jamie Heath, the CEO, his main investor, Steve Sarowitz, the PR companies, and Jedwallace had all tried to sue the New York Times for defamation, which was dismissed in June of this year. His attorney, Bryan Freedman, who was accused when at college of gang R-wording a minor who was drunk and incapacitated, and he paid her a $40,000 settlement, and just recently practically assaulted another attorney while in a hearing for another one of his cases representing Vin Diesel, which is a strong indication he's not able to control his emotions, and he's not been seen in public since. Well, after the defamation suit was dismissed, he went on a public PR campaign of his own and appeared on the Megyn Kelly show again, where she called Blake a B, and he again referred to her as a narcissist, the transcript of which has now been entered as evidence of the ongoing smear campaign against Blake Lively. And although their claims for defamation were swiftly, no pun intended, dismissed, although Jed's case in Texas against Blake is still ongoing, we can already see that the new Unsealed emails conflict with his declaration in that lawsuit. And as I've shown in a previous video, he's already been shown to have lied in court documents about his education. Like all of them, he's tried to blame his problems on Blake and play the victim. There has been endless videos in support of Justin Baldoni, or rather continuing the hate train against Blake Lively. Some of them new to the story, like Candace Owens.
It's a shocking case. People are going, oh, it's just like celebrity drama. No, this isn't celebrity drama. This is so much deeper than that. Okay. We are talking about the corruption of the media, who has the trust of the people. Like, you're an educated person, you read the New York Times, right? The New York Times essentially assisted in a hit on a man. For what reason? What did Blake actually want from Justin Baldoni? Publishing rights.
So this is the same woman that platformed Andrew Tate and said he's been falsely accused when he's openly abused women on his own platforms and scammed lots of young men into giving him money to join his Hustlers University courses, where he taught how to sex traffic women. And he's now suing two very small content creators for defamation when he literally shouts about free speech. And Candace Owens is part of the right-wing establishment from the UK with her husband, who was a member of the Bullingdon Club at Oxford University with half the Conservative government. and his dad is a lord, and they own a right-wing lobbying group to young people. They get paid to promote the concept of free speech and traditional marriage, endorsed by Jacob Rees-Mogg, a Tory MP and Catholic who owns shares in an abortion pill company. Mr. Anti-Abortion Catholic himself. He also said that people who died in the Grenfell fire had no common sense. And this is the same woman that talks about corruption and the elite. She is not a journalist, and pretty much everything she says can be debunked by simple fact-checking, hence why she's getting sued by the president of France. And the platform she's saying this on, Tucker Carlson, is another client of Bryan Freedman. She's not a victim of protected speech, she literally makes things up. The New York Times, on the other hand, works within a very tight legal framework, and that's why they very rarely lose defamation cases. With that being said, they are very much a corporation, and so their perspective will always be slightly biased, but maybe not as bad as Candace's.
And we got to read her messages, and she wanted to be put on the film, and she wanted to be put as a producer, executive producer, or else.
So she's playing on the ignorance of most people to not understand that a Hollywood film studio would not allow a woman to demand to be made a producer. That's why they have agents and lawyers of their own to negotiate their contract. In fact, there has been more unsealed evidence this week in emails showing they were discussing her PGA credit and payment way back when they were shooting the movie. It had nothing to do with her demanding it, it was part of her contract. The demand she may be referring to, which has been made a talking point. This was a list of protections drawn up by all parties when they returned to work after the strike action to respect personal boundaries, such as, can you not talk about your porn addiction at work, or describe your genitalia? Seems fair. Can you not show me naked videos of your wife? Can you not ask me if I always climax at the same time as my husband? Which anyone going to work in a professional environment would expect to be a given, but not at Wayfarer Productions, apparently, an organisation that's meant to promote female equality, and they had to ask for protections to feel safe. Only it's been recharacterised as a demand list by the PR company, aka Exhibit A, and we now know it was inappropriately shared with Jedwallace in an email on the 5th of August when he said he didn't start working for them until nearly a week later, when he was being paid $90,000 to do social media monitoring. And there's the issue of her agreeing to be filmed naked, as if anyone, including Candace Owens herself, would be prepared to strip off naked without prior agreement. Because I've seen trolls in the comments talking about this. The movie was meant to be rated a PG-13 and about moving on from domestic violence. It was Justin that wanted to add in the underage sex scene, which was never written about in the book. Can we talk about point 27? No more asking of sex scenes, oral sex, or on-camera climaxing by BL. No more asking or pressuring BL to cross-strike picket lines. No more retaliative or abusive behaviour. If she was lying about harassment, why would they have drawn up this list of reasonable requests?
You do this or else, threatening, so I'm not going to come back. Here are my demands. I mean, a total witch. Truly, that woman is possessed. I cannot, after reading those messages and Justin falling over himself because he was like, she's an A-lister, just to, he was almost like pathetic, like stand up for yourself at a certain point. And what's happening right now, like in the court system in New York, they're allowing her to, I don't know, like it just seems like it's a very corrupt case. But what happened to Justin Baldoni, it is, everyone should be reading those messages and realizing what the New York Times took part in, because we're seeing this happen over and over again, where the media, like the journalists, are acting like assassins, right? These are assassins. These are assassinations, right? You're going to hit someone, you're going to hit their entire career.
They're called hit pieces.
The reason why the article was so interesting was because it exposed, with all the emails and text messages which were obtained totally legally and by due process, how the image of someone like Justin Baldoni, just because he can afford to pay Melissa Nathan, is so craftily protected and constructed, and how they use content creators and media outlets to their advantage to push a narrative that dominates the algorithm. The same people that have been named on another court document by Wayfarer, TMZ, Perez Hilton, Andy Signal, another man who sexually harassed his own staff and viewers, has made tons of content like this video criticizing Blake Lively's makeup application, which would most probably have been done by a makeup artist anyway, to fundraise with donations, presumably from people equally disgusted by her body makeup, to pay for a documentary in support of Justin Baldoni, which you have to pay a membership fee to watch the trailer of. He's gone and posted a picture outside Blake Lively's set house, tagging the movie and writing, "Should I knock?" like a true stalker. It's borderline harassment pretending to be journalism. Some might say a scam. He's even bragging how it's paying for his holiday.
Look at this view. I'm going to enjoy this drink. I'm going to go back to it without any worries whatsoever. I get to monetize while on vacation now. Thanks to you, Blake, bringing this in and defaming me. We will have an official response from our lawyer on the docket this week, so stay tuned.
And he depends on the generosity and obsessive nature of his audience, watching, commenting, reposting, and trolling, sometimes for hours a day. Like this account on Twitter that I know was once a Free Britney supporter. And some of them will get into deep arguments with anyone that doesn't agree with them or their favourite creator, and they might go as far as to make up alternative anonymous accounts and go as far as doxing or harassing people, like leaving hate comments on the judge's brother's Instagram. Crazy work. And yet the reason why they claim to support Justin Baldoni is because Blake and her husband are the real bullies, when in all the time I've been following this, they've not made one public statement about it. They've been going about their business, doing their red carpets, putting a brave face on it, I would say. Meanwhile, these obsessive creators have been making hundreds of videos day after day, collecting those donations, making their AdSense money, trying to flog their AI disgusting designed merch, and using their own self-involvement in the case to portray themselves as victims. But that seems to be lost on their fans. And so when we found out that Jedwallace was paid $90,000 to interact with these people, to go into their communities on places like Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, I mean, that's what it said they were paying him to do, although he denies it. We're going to look at it in a minute. And in Melissa Nathan's own words, in a text to Justin Baldoni, she said, "We do not use bots. Bots and fan accounts run pretty organically by now. With all the AI platforms and Google Analytics itself, there is no bot army. That's a myth these days. The other team is doing something very specific in terms of what they do." I know, Jamie and Jed connected on this. So I hadn't made a video for a while because the narratives were starting to make me feel a bit brain dead. Some of the worst content creators and TikTokers and people on Twitter who say they're lawyers, by spreading misinformation and making it about themselves, they cause so many arguments. And they started to take over the Reddit subthread. We're still not 100% clear on everyone's role in the manipulation process, the part of the story that journalists should be interested in. But obviously, content creators that are part of the smear campaign are not going to want you to know that. And the discovery is not discovering, because the Wayfarer parties are refusing to hand over any more communication evidence which would show there hadn't been a retaliatory smear campaign, as much as it would prove there is one, and that it's still going on, because evidence at court hearings and in documents is coming out that it very much is. We just heard in June that Tag PR has another digital agency they use called Skylight, and they're refusing to hand over communications evidence. We did find out that a journalist at the Daily Mail, James Vatushka, had suggested Blake was SA in a text message he sent to Bryan Freedman that hadn't come from her publicist. And now he's taken on criminal defense lawyer Mark Garagos, who represents P. Diddy and Chris Brown. And the legal process has been very long and drawn out, leading to the pretty extreme measure of content creators being subpoenaed themselves, which has caused even more confusion and hysteria I couldn't be bothered to get involved with, because some of them made up that they were subpoenaed, and it's all been to get more engagement and views and followers.
Of course, the Lively parties, say that these other clients are operating a coordinated, untraceable smear campaign against Blake Lively. So we live tweeted it. A lot of interest in it. I find it unpalatable that relatively, some are big. There's Megyn Kelly, there's Candace Owen, there's Paris Hilton. There's a Twitter account with 246 followers getting a subpoena from Wilkie, Farr, and Gallagher. It's too much.
I get what he's saying because he's an actual journalist and it does feel intrusive. But if your case is to prove that your client has an ongoing smear campaign using smaller, anonymous, untraceable accounts, they're the ones you need to be looking at. And maybe he doesn't quite understand how these troll networks operate. Maybe he's bought into the idea that this was all organic and Blake Lively brought this all on herself, which was one of the original talking points put out into the media. Only she'd gathered and shown her own data analysis in the original complaint. When the spike in negative content about her happened at exactly the time that Melissa Nathan was brought on board, that we now know she shared what she calls the demand letter to Jed on the 5th of August, that it was her suggestion to bring Jed in, and that Katie Case, also of Tag PR, said in an unsealed email to echo Melissa, Jed is truly the best of the best. So happy we could make this connection. She also said he was very close to Bryan Freedman, making it seem like they've worked together before, and they needed to start a signal threat, the app that has disappearing messages. There was an extract from another message which said they'd earlier discussed social manipulation from a separate team in Hawaii, and clarifying they were included in the fee to ensure they were fully protected. And we already know Jed has a long history of working with people with addiction. He claims all he does is help people, but he does PR for the brokers of the rehab centers who profit from the addicts. And when I went to check the TikToks that were posted around the time of the spike, this was me just doing a random check. I clicked on the profile of a comment about them not posing in photos together. It was from someone in Hawaii posting about their recovery journey, and then there was another one also based in Hawaii. I mean, it could have just been a coincidence, but how does she even know they weren't posing in pictures together? We already know that some of the people that comment obsessively have addiction issues. You can tell because they're always online commenting, especially on Reddit. And I wonder if they get paid anything when Jed picks up his 90 grand check, because my guess is none of these people get paid, or if they do, it's in crypto or gift cards. Or is it he knows how to engage with them and get them to join in the conversation? Because for some people, an acknowledgement on a comment or even getting into an argument is a validation. And remember when he said we're crushing it on Reddit the day after he started his contract? So many of the talking points, like how the book romanticized domestic violence, how they didn't like the casting or the outfits, or the story about her wedding at a plantation, came from old Reddit threads. And Reddit was where they reposted Shusty Floor's nightmare interview, the one when she said she was a bully. And nothing spreads online quicker than hatred for a woman. And guess what? The person who posted that video has deleted all their posts and comments, and they're in an anti-Taylor Swift community. Taylor Swift was brought up very early on in the conversation by Melissa Nathan, whose company is owned by Scooter Braun, who has a very long history pissing off Taylor Swift and her fans. Then there was this TikTok by someone who said they'd sold their product on Blake Lively's website in 2015 and then removed them because of the plantation wedding. I find it hard to believe because people did not care about that stuff, especially in the fashion industry in 2015. I was working in the fashion industry back then. And find me a retail outlet online, look at Amazon or ASOS, that doesn't have problematic or ethical issues going on. And when I searched her website, Preserve, there was a whole load of articles from this year, all from May 2025, making me think someone put out a press release. And the smear campaign is definitely still going on. And I think it's in the public interest to find out how it's being incentivized and paid for. And that lies and hatred against women are being promoted on social media platforms with such little protection or recourse. And I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but it has shifted into the right-wing commentary channel space, where you will find anti-Amber Heard and anti-Meghan Markle content. And so when you find out that there's this lobbying group behind Candace Owens and her husband, I'm pretty sure she's not the only channel that's sponsored by one. They have an agenda as a right-wing conservative activist and political organisation that aims to challenge the left-leaning bias in our institutions and wider society. There's a left-leaning bias. There's definitely a right-leaning bias on social media because it's always in my face, and this explains why. Expose the far left and end the tyranny of woke ideology. Although I still don't know what woke means, I have a feeling it has something to do with sexism and racism. And I do feel like this story has become part of a political agenda. And I do think the content creators who received subpoenas could have remained anonymous, but they were so eager to make it about themselves and they wanted to make it seem like a free speech issue. And stay with me on this one. It almost feels like it has something to do with an anti-Me Too movement. Another creator who's been all over the story is someone called Colonel Kurtz. And I randomly found out the other day that Steve Sarowitz, the billionaire investor in Wayfarer, who preaches about female equality, has a YouTube channel, and he's subscribed to all of these people. None of them support women's rights. Colonel Kurtz has made comments about the Me Too movement going too far. That's what she puts this story down to. She said the Me Too movement is out of control. It's absolutely absurd. One case after another getting exposed or flat out BS. The thing is, if you look at the facts that were in Blake Lively's original complaint, it's really not too difficult to imagine that creepy Baldoni was acting like that. Because that's how he acts. In all the content I've seen of him, he talks about his porn addiction and his flaws as a man and his obsession with boobs. It's not much of a stretch to imagine him doing that. What is absurd is going on a protest on his behalf. And she's another one who's tried to get herself involved in the legal process. Like the true troll she is. She wrote an amicus brief to the judge, which I don't even think it got filed before Justin's case was dismissed. I think it was more of a fundraising opportunity for her to do a live stream about it. And I saw a lot of people donate in the comments. And then what really doesn't make sense is that Jamie and Justin, who have made content promoting Me Too, would want to withhold correspondence proving their innocence unless they have something to hide.
Jamie, what do you think the responsibility is on us men, knowing that most of the abuse and the harassment and the things that we're learning and reading about are happening at the hands of men to women?
I have a very strong belief that we share this belief that the world is imbalanced because of the inequality of women. That we can never realize true unity and salvation for all of humanity until women are flying as strong as men. So our responsibility is to, number one, we had said, listen to them first.
I see a risk. There have been some activists who said, well, who cares if some innocent people go down?
We've interviewed them.
I spoke to them. I believe them. I'm just wondering if all women need to be believed.
The people of Alabama know that this is a hit job.
Okay, but these women, it's not the worst. These women have put their name on it.
Women are especially good at lying.
Do we have to believe all the women? That was the question I posed before.
I'd like to believe all the women.
You'd like to, but will you or do you have to?
My doctor asked me, what kind of woman goes out without her husband?
Okay, well, what did I do to encourage that?
What was she wearing? Was she like, what did she drink? What, like, all these questions about like what she did.
And so when you get these responses, it makes you feel like you shouldn't say anything.
And listening to the other women tell their stories enabled me to actually feel empathy for myself and enabled me to feel anger for the first time.
I think especially hearing other women who have told their stories about what they've been going through, and then you're like, oh, wait, I see a part of my story in her narrative. And if that was what she was going through, like, is my story connected to that as well? Oh, you too. Like, oh, okay.
Part of why I'm here and I'm speaking out and I'm sharing something so embarrassing and so personal is because I'm speaking for the women who can't share.
What the Baha'i faith has that I've noticed more than any other religion I've seen is the focus on the collective salvation of humanity. And this is something I've really bought into in everything I do. And the collective salvation of humanity can only happen through the oneness of humanity. So the collective salvation of humanity means that we get along and we finally slay the dragon of racism in America and sexism. I didn't really talk about this, but I've seen it in the companies I work at, that women aren't listened to in meetings, that women aren't respected, that sexual harassment is allowed to go on. We as men need to stand up against that and realize that women are our mothers, our wives, our daughters. How could we possibly disrespect a woman?
Is this the same guy that said he would spend $100 million to ruin the lives of Blake Lively and her family? That he would defend his company, protect the studio, the way Israel protected itself from Hamas with 2 dead bodies when he's done, like literally saying he'll commit genocide. But is this someone who really believes in humanity and ending sexism and racism, or does it sound like a fraud? And speaking of fraud, because this story just goes on and on, Wayfarer's insurance company are now suing them for trying to commit legal fraud by not telling them about the SH, and so they're refusing to pay their fees for the defamation suit. And before I go, Bryan Freedman, the guy with the anger issues, well, Blake Lively's team believes strongly that he is the source to some of the creators and media outlets, which again, is it really that hard to believe? And that's why he's been subpoenaed. If you watch any of my videos about P. Diddy's lawyer, Mark Geragos, you'll find out he uses crisis PR, and she was outside the trial engaging with the creators and getting them to switch sides to supporting Diddy. And she was giving them transcripts. And Megyn Cunniff, she speaks directly to defense lawyers. So it really seems to be standard. And it's just another example of how we're being influenced by some of the worst people so they can get away with their behaviour. It just seems so obvious to me who the real liars in this story are. Only I'm not out here making a living out of gullible people. And the reason why I'm taking an interest in it and following all the twists and turns is because of this practice known as astroturfing, which has been defined as the practice of publishing opinions or comments on the internet, in the media, etc., that appear to come from ordinary members of the public, but actually come from a particular party or political group, which is what Melissa Nathan, Tag PR, Jedwallace, Skyline all specialise in. Melissa Nathan in particular worked for the Trump organization, and she was named or questioned about the Cambridge Analytica exposure. I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think she's changed. She also works with Drake, Travis Scott, Jake Paul, Aiden Ross. These are all really suspect people who promote gambling and fraud to kids. I've seen people in comments calling Travis Scott a billionaire. On what planet? Anyway, I'm going to continue to watch what's going on. Blake Lively has given her deposition, and it's funny because I bet the same creators that are complaining about their privacy being invaded would be first in line to publish the transcripts of her deposition if they were released. And just as I'm making this video, Judge Liman has made a ruling on the 300-page deposition, which the Wayfarer parties and Bryan Freedman were trying to publish, probably on their website. Or maybe they were going to send it to the content creators that are on their mailing list that are refusing to be subpoenaed. Well, Judge Liman's made it very clear what he thinks. He said that publishing the deposition served no proper litigation purpose and instead appears to have been intended to burden Lively and, as a result, the court, and to invite public speculation and scandal. So that's them told, really. There was more. In a footnote, he said, the Wayfarer party's actions follow a pattern of using filings on the docket as an opportunity to litigate this case in the press rather than in court. The court has already stricken from the record prior filings made by the Wayfarer parties for the improper purpose of inviting a press uproar. The trial is not until next year, so we still have a long time to wait. All of this experience with this situation has made me very aware that a lot of people have ulterior motives and they're not good ones. So everything we see or hear, we need to be cautious what we're engaging with, because most of the content about this has got it completely the wrong way around.
I see this as a method by the Lively attorneys to do anything and everything to break apart the defense and the team that is doing the defense. So to me, it screams as a desperate move by the Lively party to dismantle the other side in any shape, way, or form.